Week 5 is officially under wraps, and today I got you guys covered with my top 10 waiver ads entering Week 6 of fantasy football. Hopefully you secure the dubs in Week 5. It's time to get active on the waiver wire. Before we get into the official top 10 ads, though, we go through the should-be roster tier. Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle, Darnell Mooney, Tucker Kraft, Josh Downs, Trey Sermon, Alexander Madison, Antonio Gibson, and Alan Lazard are my top names that should be rostered in your league. Again, they are all rostered currently in 50+% of your sleeper leagues. But if they were available in your league, they would be worthy of a top 10 spot in this video. But moving off of the should be roster tier, we go into the official top 10, starting off with my number 1 pickup of the week, a guy I'd be willing to spend upwards of 20 to 25% of my fab on. We have Jalen Tolbert of the Dallas Cowboys, man, and he finally had his NFL breakout this past week. He caught 7 of his 10 targets for 87 receiving yards and the go-ahead game-winning touchdown for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not going to lie, I've been noticing it all year, even as a Cowboys fan. Jalen Tolbert in his 3rd season looks like a completely different player to the first 2. Even prior to Brandon Cooks going down, I was making the argument that I thought Jalen Tolbert could be the number 2 wide receiver on this team. We see Brandon Cooks added to IR, missing at least the next 4 games. And in the first game without Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert took that next step. Like I said, 26% target share in this game, 10 targets commanded from Dak Prescott. And it's clear as day that Dak Prescott trusts him to make the plays at the end of the game, like we saw on Sunday Night Football against the Steelers. I think he's a must-roster option, and with Brandon Cooks out of the lineup, he is going to be a staple top 30 wide receiver for me moving forward. 3 games of his last 4 in 10-plus PPR points, and I expect that to continue with the roll bump he's just received. A close number 2 for me, though, is Juju Smith-Schuster, who played on Monday Night Football. He's currently only rostered in 6% of sleeper leagues, and I'd be willing to spend, like Tolbert, 20 to 25% of my fab on Juju Smith-Schuster. It is a very similar case. Juju just took the Rashee Rice role, obviously with Rashee Rice out of the lineup. We saw him command 8 targets, which he turned into 7 catches for 130 receiving yards, and he showcased that yak ability in the open field. He really, truly played the Rashee Rice role like Rashee Rice would have played it. So the fact that he's already grown accustomed to that role, the fact that he was basically Rashee Rice in this offense a couple of years ago prior to Rashee Rice being drafted, I'm very optimistic for Juju Smith-Schuster. That is the most juice I've seen Juju Smith-Schuster have in the last couple of years. Again, I think this is going to be a staple moving forward. We know that Travis Kelce is going to command targets at the tight end position. Our real question mark is, with Rashee Rice out of the lineup, is it going to be Xavier Worthy taking on a new opportunity workload, or is it going to be someone else stepping up? In the case of Juju Smith-Schuster, he absolutely stepped up. 24% target share on only 66% of the team routes. And like I said, I think moving forward, given the usage we saw on Monday Night Football, we can consider Juju Smith-Schuster as a top 30 play at the wide receiver position for the time being. Tyrone Tracy, running back of the New York Giants, comes in next, a guy that would be a slight tier after the top 2 wide receivers in my opinion, but someone I would still be willing to spend upwards of 15 to 20% of my fab on. And the reason why he's not quite in the same stratosphere as the top 2 plays, in my opinion, is that we do expect Devin Singletary to come back. If Devin Singletary tomorrow was ruled out for the next few weeks, you can even make the case for Tyrone Tracy being the number 1 waiver wire option this week. This is a guy that I had ranked as my RB7 in the 2024 NFL Draft, a guy I comped to Tony Pollard, and he looked like Tony Pollard on Sunday, man. The way he was running against the Seahawks, initially at the beginning of the game, it was kind of a 50-50 split between him and Eric Gray. Eric Gray fumbles on the goal line, returned for a touchdown by the Seahawks. After that, man, it was the Tyrone Tracy show. 7.2 yards per carry, 20 opportunities in this game. And what he showed me is that at the very minimum, he is one of the highest implied handcuff plays in fantasy football should Singletary miss time. And I really do think there's a possibility as the season goes along within the next few weeks, if Tyrone Tracy keeps playing up to this level, there's a very real shot he can wrestle the starting job from Devin Singletary. Even when Singletary comes back to the Giants, Tracy looked that good. We know Singletary is a solid but replaceable NFL running back. And that's what I saw in his film coming into the draft. Very, very good creator in the open field. My question was how quick he would adapt to the NFL. It looks like game 1 as a starter, he adapted quite quickly. Again, similar to Tyrone Tracy, number 4 for me is Tank Bigsby, another guy I'd be willing to spend 15 to 20% of my fab on, rostered in 31% of sleeper leagues. Again, very similar pickup in the sense that it's a backup or 1B running back that really showed out in the opportunities that he got in this game. He actually didn't even need a Travis Etienne injury in this game. He flat out outplayed Travis Etienne. 13 carries, 101 yards, busted off 2 touchdown runs. Was a very good, very efficient running back in this game. And he's flat out played better than Travis Etienne this year. The reason why I do have Tyrone Tracy ahead of him is I think it's more likely Tracy can wrestle the starting job from Devin Singletary outright. Whereas when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars situation, I don't think they can totally shut out Travis Etienne, even if Bigsby were to become the majority starter. Again, the one saving grace, I would say, in terms of what could potentially unlock Bigsby as the ultimate team starter bell cow back is if Travis Etienne on a 1-4 Jaguars team were to be moved by the deadline. If that happened, I think that would be the best case scenario for both guys. Etienne gets a fresh start on a new team, potentially a contending team, and Bigsby becomes a full-time workhorse in that backfield. It's possible, like I said, 1-4 Jaguars team, Travis Etienne contract running out in terms of his rookie deal. I could potentially see him being moved, but the reason, like I said, if Travis Etienne is on the team, I can't rank Bigsby any higher than 4, but he is a must-own player knowing the implied upside, given the talent level and the efficiency he's shown in this backfield. Number 5 pickup, we have Jordan Whittington, wide receiver of the LA Rams, rostered in 35% of sleeper leagues. A guy I would also be willing to spend 10 to 15% of my fab on. With Jordan Whittington, yes, the Rams are on bye week in week 6, but he quietly has looked like a B-Tech Puka Nacua, a B-Tech Cooper Kupp, in the sense that he's playing their role and he's cut from the same cloth of what makes those guys so great. Making those tough middle-of-the-field catches, being able to exploit the yak game. What we've seen from Jordan Whittington in the absence of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, like I said, has looked like those guys on the field. It doesn't really look like the Rams have missed a beat missing those guys out of the lineup. And we do expect Cooper Kupp to return to the lineup in week 7, which is why I can't rank Whittington higher. But I do think there's a possibility that both can coexist. Because like I said, if Whittington to me looks like Puka Nacua, I'm sure that the Rams staff have been noticing that, especially given the usage he has seen with both of the lineup. In the last 2 weeks, he has had 97% and 85% of the team routes, and has commanded a 22+% target share in each of those 2 games. Both those games, he scored over 10 PPR points, looked good, looked efficient, didn't even need to score a touchdown in that stretch to be a guy that was consistently a wide receiver 3 or better. And like I said, even with Cooper Kupp coming back, I view Jordan Whittington as the must-roster Rams receiver after the top 2. Puka Nacua is still going to be missing time, and while I do think once Puka comes back, Whittington would take a reserve role, I still think he's one of the few implied wide receiver plays in fantasy, in the sense that he is so stylistically similar to the Rams' top 2 wide receivers that should either of them, or both like we saw last week, miss time, Jordan Whittington becomes a must-start fantasy football option at the wide receiver position, a top 24, top 30 level play, with either of them being out of the lineup. Number 6, we have the pair of Texans backs here with Cam Akers and Dario Ogunbowale. Dario Ogunbowale currently rostered in 4% of sleeper leagues. Cam Akers currently rostered in 48% of leagues. So I have listed here fab 5 to 10%. Would bid closer to the higher end of that with Dario Ogunbowale, the lower end of that when it comes to Cam Akers. And the reason why is that that's how the Texans view it. The Texans view Dario Ogunbowale as the majority starter in this backfield based off the usage each of these guys seen. Again, I think Akers has a fine, goal line role, touchdown equity, and a high-scoring offense, whereas Dario Ogunbowale will take a big-time receiving role with the potential absence of Nico Collins in the lineup, which was initially described as the hamstring injury being day-to-day, then switch to week. So it does sound like Nico Collins is at least going to miss 1 week. And if that's the case, like we saw in this past game against Buffalo, Dario Ogunbowale is commanding targets out of the backfield. So like I said, in PPR leagues especially, I would prefer Ogunbowale, but I think both are fine pickups. And if you need a streaming option as soon as this week, assuming Mixon is set to miss again, because the overall pessimism from DeMeco Ryans points to the fact that he may miss week 6 as well. Number 7 pickup is Tre Tucker, wide receiver of the Las Vegas Raiders, currently rostered in 37% of sleeper leagues. Another guy I'd be willing to spend 5 to 10% of my fab on. He's quietly commanded volume in each of the last 3 games, and with Davante Adams potentially being moved within the next couple of weeks, or at the very minimum by the deadline, Tre Tucker is in store for an extreme role bump, like we've seen with the absence of Davante Adams in the last few weeks. He has run 87+% of the team routes in each of the last 3 weeks, and the other 2 weeks prior to this week was able to score in double digits of PPR leagues. Again, he's not going to be the most consistent option, but in terms of the role he can play on this offense, I think he can be the 3rd target after Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, and kind of play a pseudo, Wan'Dale Robinson type of role, yak ability in the middle of the field for an offense that should be in very pass-heavy game scripts, given the struggling defense they have over there in Las Vegas. Again, he's not the sexiest appeal play, but in terms of having potential wide receiver 4 flex utility, I think Tre Tucker is a must-roster option in your leagues. Again, not the biggest priority, but a guy that, especially through bye weeks, especially through injury, you can put into your lineups in a pinch. Number 8 is Chandler, running back of the Minnesota Vikings, rostered in 36% of sleeper leagues. Another guy I'd be willing to spend 5 to 10% of my fab on. And this is more of an implied play because we do know that Aaron Jones did go down with that hip injury in week 5. However, it does sound like Aaron Jones will be ready to play in the Vikings' next game. They have a bye week in week 6. Their next game is in week 7. So it does sound like Aaron Jones will be ready by then. However, I still think Chandler is a prime pickup because we saw the Vikings' intentions should Aaron Jones miss time in the future. Aaron Jones, older running back, 29 years old, a lot of touches under his belt, already dealing with a hip injury, and he does have a history of lower body injuries. And we saw the Vikings tip their hand about what a backfield without Aaron Jones would look like, and that was Chandler taking on a majority workload. He was getting bell cow level usage on what we project to be a great offense moving forward. The Vikings, though, looks great. Kevin O'Connell is dialing it up. And if Aaron Jones were to miss any time, Chandler would immediately be a top 15 running back start at the position. So I think he's a must roster option. You're currently getting a discount because people expect Aaron Jones to be back. But if you can get him for 5 to 10% of your fab, I think he is one of the best implied plays in all of fantasy football. Number 9 pickup is Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals, rostered in 24% of sleeper leagues. Another guy I'd be willing to spend 5 to 10% of my fab on. He's quietly played some good football in the last 3 weeks. He's gotten very good usage in that stretch. 3 straight games of 20+% of the targets from Kyler, and he is the clear number 3 weapon in this offense after Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. While I don't think he's going to be this smash, wide receiver 1 overall in the week type of upside, I do think, like Tre Tucker, he has potential opportunity to be a very solid wide receiver 4 utility option. And I think with Michael Wilson, his ceiling could be a guy that can be a top 36 wide receiver in fantasy rankings moving forward. Like Tre Tucker, I like both these guys, especially in PPR settings, and I think they are very good depth pieces, especially, like I said, going through bye weeks, going through injuries to get you through a week in a pinch. And then finally, number 10, we have Jaylen Wright, running back of the Miami Dolphins, rostered in 20% of sleeper leagues. Another guy I'd be willing to spend 5 to 10% of my fab on. With Devon Achane suffering an early game concussion this week, Jaylen Wright became the clear tandem back next to Raheem Mostert. Like I said, the Dolphins are on bye in week 6, and we do expect Devon Achane to be back. But should Achane miss any time, I do think Jaylen Wright becomes a sneaky option to put into your lineup. Again, it probably won't matter until Tua Tagovailoa is back from his concussion. However, with the double implied upside that Jaylen Wright brings to the table, behind 2 running backs that have missed time in the last 2 years with Raheem Mostert and with Devon Achane, I think he is one of the biggest home run swings in fantasy football. Again, he needs one injury to either of those 2 players that have missed significant time in the last 2 years. And we saw Jaylen Wright, what he's able to do, the movement he brings to the backfield, obviously the prospect profile he brought out of Tennessee, a guy I ranked as my RB3 in the NFL draft. I think the upside is massive. Again, it probably won't matter until Tua's back in the lineup, but I think he becomes a must-roster player, knowing that he has 2 paths to immediate fantasy stardom. But either way, if you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below. If you guys want access to all of our weekly rankings moving forward, head over to flockfantasy.com. Promo code FSE will get you 30% off of any package, as well as a 7-day free trial on the site. Don't miss out. We're updating those on a week-to-week basis to help you guys secure your fantasy football championships. But with that being said, take care. Good luck in the waiver wire. Let's go get these pickups, baby.